Started. Thanks everyone for being here.
Hi, thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes,
Good.
sorry.
Yeah, you're
Hi,
good.
we were having some audio issues. But thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Kirsten. Just some quick introductions. I'm Joyce. I'm an undergrad at Georgetown University studying economics and government. This summer, I was a student analyst at the Beeck Center. My project was focusing on program monitoring, assessment, and evaluation. But I also got to sit in on this really cool project embedding with the Colorado Digital Service. And coming from, going into Beck, I didn't really have any idea of what a digital service team was. I wasn't that aware of civic technology, and I definitely learned a lot, but I didn't truly get a sense of what a digital service team was until sitting in on this project and observing as much as we did. And I'm excited to share what we learned with everyone here.
So hi everyone, my name is Ryan Powers. I'm a second-year master's candidate in the CCT program, focusing the intersection of technology and public policy. So I've been with the Beeck Center since February of this year, working on the digital service network. So prior to Georgetown, I was in finance for 3 years. So it wasn't all that long ago that I didn't know what a digital service team was or what one did. I have to give credit to Emily Tavalarius and her class on public interest technology here at the McCourt School. For any Georgetown students listening today, it's offered in the fall. It's really great, really a great class. It was my first introduction to civic technology and was the catalyst for getting involved with the Beeck Center. So yeah, as Kirsten and Joyce mentioned, we spent the summer embedding with the Colorado Digital Service to see their work up close and try to understand how successful digital service teams operate. So today we'll take you through a basic definition of a digital service team before tying that into CDS and their approach, and then talk a little bit about some common challenges that digital service teams face. And after that, we'll open it up to questions. So I keep saying digital service team, but what does that mean? So digital service teams in a definition are interdisciplinary collaborative teams in government that use technology, research, and software development techniques to deliver high quality services quickly and affordably. It's all a mouthful. So say a legislature passes a bill that funds a brand new public benefit. And so now you probably need an application or a website of some kind. It has to be secure, accessible, scalable. And it has to be a place where residents and other stakeholders in and out of government can interface with each other. So citizens are able to access this benefit at the end of the process. And this all has to happen without the website crashing, and the project probably has to be completed on a tight timeline. So it's hard to go successfully from legislation to working technology or modernize existing government services. But helping manage those transitions is where a digital service team comes in. So this concept traces back to roughly 2014 when the US digital service was formed at the federal level. But since then, digital service teams have kind of filtered down to many US states and cities, and even internationally, where Canada and the United Kingdom are two great examples. So examples are the best tool to kind of contextualize what exactly these teams do. So I'll just run through a few here. With benefits modernization, which is a really common one, applying for public benefits shouldn't mean a stack of hard to navigate papers for someone. And there are numerous examples of digital service teams helping to streamline this process so that residents can access programs and services that they're entitled to. And just one of these examples is the New Jersey Office of Innovation. Improving civic engagement, like in the city of Boston, the digital service team there created a more intuitive way for residents to submit questions and feedback to the city for new parks projects. With crisis response, especially given the recent pandemic, the California Office of Data and Innovation was able to build and launch a scalable and accessible COVID website within 5 days in early 2020. And lastly, accessibility. Government websites and programs have to be accessible to every resident. So digital service teams focus on user-centered design so that every resident has access to the same essential public information. So as you can see, these projects cross policy disciplines and really can touch every facet of government. And this list is, of course, non-exhaustive. So I would invite anybody on this webinar interested in reading more to go to the Beeck Center website. We have a lot of case studies there and just blog posts that can give you a little more insight into what these teams are doing around the country.
Yeah, and another thing that really helped me understand what a digital service team was and their role was understanding different models of how they work. So there are two main models that are common. First is the engagement model, where there is one central digital service team that keeps an eye out for government projects, where they can embed some members of their team into an agency or a department that works on a tech project that they can help on. And the timelines of these engagements and the purposes are all scoped out, their mandates are scoped out, and the team is embedded for shorter periods of time. And these are common among newer digital service teams and smaller jurisdictions. But for larger jurisdictions and digital service teams that might have more resources, we've seen them adopt a hub and spoke model where there is a hub team that addresses projects that come up, build technological capacity within lawmaking and lawmakers, and provide support on government-wide projects that might include tech. But there are also many spoke teams that are similar to the engagement model. They embed within departments or agencies on specific projects, but we've seen them be embedded for extended periods of time, and they work more on specific projects. They kind of have more ownership over those projects since they do stay there for a longer time. And again, these are for larger digital service teams and jurisdictions. For example, the USDS, US Digital Service, operates under this model.
So the Colorado Digital Service was started back in 2019. CDS is a diverse cross-functional team of engineers, human-centered design specialists, product experts, procurement experts. And plainly, their mission is to help state agencies deliver high-quality products and services to the people of Colorado through their approach of focusing on people, process, and technology, which we'll take you through. So CDS makes sure people are at the center of everything that they do. That includes the community members that they're building products and services for, but also their fellow stakeholders in government that they work with. So they want to make sure that their solutions, above all, meet the needs of the user. They approach projects through an agile, flexible, collaborative development process that places an emphasis on overall outcomes over optics or just satisfying requirements along the way. And the goal at the end is to deliver effective technology solutions that work, which might sound obvious, but it's an important distinction compared to building, maybe a good-looking website that might not really address the problem that you set out to solve.
And so the first prong of their approach is people, which is prioritizing the user experience and minimizing disruption of current practices. And we've broken this down into two ideas. The first is user-centered design, particularly in the procurement process. So since digital service teams projects might be largely improving public-facing services, it's important that these teams bake in user input at all steps of the process. So this could mean conducting user research through focus groups, building relationships early on in the project with users, having a kind of a team that you can lean on and you can ask questions about as you're going through the process. And for procurement process in particular, this isn't just baking user input into the vendor evaluation process or later on down the line. It's starting at early stages when you're scoping out what you're looking for in the technology, leaning on the user and what they need from the technology to scope that out. So it's having that input at every step of the way. And the second idea of people is partnership with internal stakeholders. So one thing that was really unique about observing this digital service team was how much they really immersed themselves into this process. So that's not only the internal state process of the department involved that was administering the policy. They really became part of the team, got to know it well, got to know all the different aspects of this policy on the state end, but they also really embedded themselves into the process surrounding the policy and the local ecosystem of the policy. So they understood the needs of various stakeholders, how the current system of how people were going about procuring the services that they need, the different administering agencies involved. They got to know all these different stakeholders, their needs, interests, and what they look for, what they would be looking for in the technology. And they also understood how changing one thing could lead to different ripple effects within the ecosystem. And that's all a really important part of implementing policy, but that could be lost in some processes, but that was really centered in the digital service teams process, which was really interesting and fascinating to see.
So with an agile approach, you have milestones along the way that are guiding you, but the team retains the flexibility to pivot. For instance, if user research has informed a better direction to go in. So an agile iterative approach accommodates continuous feedback and improvement. And again, it's just all about making sure that what your end users are saying is really informing the whole process versus at the beginning coming up with a list of requirements or features and then kind of just checking them off. Related to that, these engagements are guided by a product roadmap that emphasizes an overall strategy over a list of requirements. This gives the digital service team, but also the internal stakeholders that they're working with, critical context for the work, and it keeps the project moving in the right direction and towards the right outcome. And lastly, digital service teams like CDS often break the often siloed nature of government technology projects through being real partners to the agencies that they engage with. They're able to deeply understand the problem and coordinate an effort towards a solution.
And so the last prong of their approach is technology, which is prioritizing how the technology functions and is experienced by the user. And we've broken this down into 3 ideas. First is effectiveness. Does the technology work well? Is it really buggy? Is it difficult for the user to understand? Does it crash a lot? And so in the background, there are a myriad of considerations that the team has to consider when building the technology. First, in terms of data integration, are there different systems involved? How do they interact? Is this data necessary for other systems? Do the systems rely on each other? How will the data be pulled from one source into the other? Will it be done seamlessly? There's also questions of data ownership and tech ownership. Who is responsible for the system? If there is a breakdown, who responds? How quickly? Who is best equipped for that? How do you make sure that the user experiences a seamless process in interacting with this technology? Ideas of modern data governance. How do you incorporate those into the technology? So there are a lot of questions surrounding technological decisions. There are pros and cons to all of them, and digital service teams with their experience with the technology and their experience in modern civic tech work, they are uniquely equipped to tackle those and make the right decision. And the second idea of technology is usability. So prioritizing the user first, even in government technology and service providing, there might be some inertia if there are existing systems and infrastructure that are in place, but that may not be the best equipped for newer projects, or that users have expressed that it was difficult to work with. It is oftentimes difficult or required a strong will to look past the inertia of, oh, we already have the system, we can just improve the system, and really identify the technology that is best for the user. And that is something that digital service teams center in particular. And lastly, flexibility. So this was an especially eye-opening idea for us as we observed this project. The idea that programs need to mature, that the implementation process is not a set timeline, it is a continuous process with these programs, that you need to balance users' needs all the time and be responsive to users' needs all the time. And if the program needs to mature, so does the technology. So the technology not only needs to satisfy current needs, but it also needs to seamlessly change as the program changes. That requires some foresight on the implementer's part to think, where is this program going? How should the technology look in response to that? And how can we create a current system that can evolve to that? But it also requires just understanding that the program is maturing, and the ability to work quickly and agilely to respond accordingly.
So a really interesting dynamic that Joyce and I noticed in our research is that digital service teams often grapple with a nonlinear process whereby policy and programmatic decisions will happen at the same time as technology and design decisions. So the issue roughly boils down to, how do you take something like a piece of legislation or a policy, which is hard to change, and square it with the process of building modular, iterative technology? And this takes collaboration with multiple teams in government, and the digital service team most of the time does not have all the answers. You can see how it might be easy then for changes and course corrections to come up out of nowhere. And so I would tie this back to the CDS approach and how important it is for a digital service team to be agile and work towards an overall outcome with built-in flexibility in the technology that they're building.
Yeah, and this is a point that we really want to harp on. This was another very eye-opening point for us. Going in, not having that much familiarity with digital service teams, but also not having observed local implementation, even at the state level implementation of policies. We thought that this project would be more of a tech project. We would observe them building an application, that there would be policy decisions that were in place that they would just plug in and code to make sure that it's the least buggy and most easy for the user. But it quickly became so much more interesting than that. And we got to see how the tech was evolving with the policy decisions and how they influenced each other. And it reminded us of kind of a debate on implementation approaches, top down or bottom up. And in particular, I think this project really showed how a bottom up approach is important, how it's important to start with the user, how the state program, where the state program interacts with the user, and then fulfill your requirements going up from there. If policy decisions happen at the same time as the technology and design, and if the technology and design team, like a digital service team, is responsive to the user's input, then the policy decisions will more accurately reflect the user's input and their needs in practice. So there's definitely complexity and difficulty with that, but ultimately that complexity is a strength of digital service teams and the policy implementation process. Yeah, and kind of along that theme, some challenges that we identified that were common among program implementation was first an accelerated timeline. So there's the balance of providing services and funds as quickly as possible to people, but also trying to perfect the delivery of providing that service. And that's a balance in terms of timeline. A lot of different processes have to happen in conjunction for the service to be delivered as quickly as possible. And a lot of coordination needs to occur as those processes happen at the same time. And also this shows how important it is to recognize that the program needs to mature and evolve, that a program might launch and it will have to change accordingly as you perfect the nuances and fix things that come up. And there's also a challenge of policy ambiguity. So oftentimes legislation won't lay out the program in depth at the granular level. And implementation isn't just plugging in those requirements, it's looking at how the policy is used on the ground, how the user interacts with the services, and creating an infrastructure that fits that model. And it's really not a bad thing. It's in fact quite a good thing that legislations often won't lay out the granular level of the program, because then implementers with the most knowledge on how the user operates can make some decisions and create the program that is most reflective of user needs. And the last challenge was the newness. For larger scale projects, digital service teams might have to kind of reimagine certain systems. There are large program scopes and a lot of current institutions that might be fulfilling that service, but a different approach, a different structure might be better. And the team will not only have to evolve those current institutions, but they'll have to kind of bring everyone else along the way and make sure that all the stakeholders are satisfied in the process, and also requiring a reevaluation of certain relationships between administrative agencies in order to best fit the system in order to best fit the needs of the system. And so that's also in very, very large challenge. But ultimately these challenges that implementers face, they allow for a better policy. Working through these challenges will ultimately create a better policy and program.
So where does this lead us? Digital service teams help transform government service delivery for the better across policy domains and ultimately making them more user-centered. Bringing user-centered design to the center of government service delivery makes a huge difference. That can just simply mean asking, who are my end users and what are they saying? That saves a lot of time, effort, and money, and residents will end up with a better experience in the end. And I think it's interesting because if you don't necessarily need a large, well-resourced digital service team to start incorporating user research into delivering products and services for citizens. Obviously, a well-resourced team might be the end goal, but bringing user research into the process is definitely something it's a place to start, right? So the core takeaway from seeing this kind of work up close is realizing simply that government actually can innovate. We hear over and over that government is bad at everything, and I'm sure there's lots of examples of that. But there are teams like CDS all over the country proving that there is another way to approach government service delivery. So with that, I think we'll open it up to Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan and Joyce. And if you joined us late, just a quick reminder that we have recorded today's webinar. It will be available to you. We'll do a quick summary as well. We've had some good comments in the chat so far, but I'll get us started with the first question. A reminder that on the human side of doing government innovation or digital innovation, and especially for students who are joining us who might be thinking about potential career paths, what were some of the key knowledge, skills, and abilities of members of the Colorado Digital Service team that you observed that made them especially skilled and good at doing this type of work?
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to it. First, there's obviously the hard skills that you need if you're working on a digital service team. Like, they have engineers, they have really, really good designers, product experts, right? So there are the hard skills that come along with those roles, but I think they're also really good facilitators, and they're able to kind of bring that change management aspect into their work, which those are more soft skills, right? And so I think it's a combination of the two that makes a team like CDS really effective. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think first of all, giant thank you to our points of contact at CDS who were amazing, not just in their work, and we saw how they worked and they were amazing at that, but also in taking us along the way. Giant thank yous. But one thing that was really, I think two things about their approach that really highlighted how important they were was, one, the user-centered design element, and not just user-centered design in crafting the program, but also just like taking a bunch of different processes happening at once among a bunch of different teams within the government, within that state, and kind of consolidating it into a coherent narrative timeline or just structure for everyone to follow, as many different teams played their role in this program. That was really impressive. And another team similar to that is project management. It's a buzzword I've heard thrown around. I didn't truly understand what that meant until observing them manage this project. And they were incredibly impressive in kind of being in understanding all the different technological requirements and fielding all of the needs there, but also centering but also taking that and communicating it to everyone and taking everyone else's knowledge and turning that into something that was productive.
Wonderful. So we have a great question here in the chat from Stephen, and they ask, how did you, or by extension, the team, hear about changes to policy versus changes to technology? So I think this is speaking to your earlier slide about how sometimes these processes are occurring at the exact same time. And so any insight into how that communications workflow was managed?
Yeah, so I think we didn't get as much exposure to this. That was mainly our points of contact, but they were great about communicating most of, giving us as much insight as they could. A lot of it was they operated under a department, an agency that was administering or implementing a program, and they became they embedded themselves into the processes within that department and identified those involved that would have kind of higher up views, more eagle-eyed views on everything that was going on, and really emphasized that they kind of understand what is going on so that their work can be best informed by that. And as questions popped up in the implementation process, questions popped up that, or decisions that they were wondering about, those popped up, and they kind of turned to other sources to answer those questions. And then because they were proactive in reaching out and gathering information and really focusing on the granular detail and figuring those out, they were able to gain a lot of knowledge about the myriad of processes that were happening all at the same time. And I think got a pretty comprehensive look at this project overall.
Thank you. And a question here from Peggy. Thank you for asking this. Did you notice a wide acceptance for user-centered design by stakeholders working with the digital team, or was that an ongoing struggle?
I can start with this one. Sorry, I'm reading through this again real quick. I think it varied by the stakeholder. A lot of the users involved, the stakeholders involved who would be using the technology, this application, they were pretty excited to share their input. I think that was something that maybe it was an opportunity for them to kind of have a say in how this system was made, the system that they have to operate under. And I think that was a very welcome, having someone listen and lean on their input was a welcome situation. And they were very generous with their time and input and all of that. I think most people I think user-centered design is kind of a newer idea. So maybe incorporating it into certain parts of a traditional procurement process, I don't think people struggled with that. I think it was figuring out how to navigate this new idea and how to best deliver it. So it's definitely a process to implement it as best, to use user-centered design as best as possible and incorporate it into the system. But ultimately, I think worth it.
Anything else to add on that, Ryan?
No, I think Joyce covered it pretty well. I don't really have anything to add to that one.
Great, and we have a great question here from Ben, and it's a good follow-up to this, the thinking about the knowledge, skills, and abilities of digital service teams, but maybe take it a step further. Any interesting personality or behavioral differences within digital service teams? Did you find the folks that you had a chance to learn from more assertive or direct or pragmatic? Anything you might want to share about the types of people who are really excelling in this field?
Yeah, well, how can I say this? So there's a benefit to having people on a digital service team be really direct in and assertive in like the direction that a project might need to go. And yeah, I think that kind of ties back to the ability of these teams to kind of break silos. Yeah, their ability to kind of like, I don't know, quote, deliver some hard truths, right? Like if something just needs to be said and heard that can, you know, get everybody onto the same page and understanding really what the core of the problem is, you know, that I think that does take a certain type of personality. So that can be beneficial. So George, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I think again, this kind of depends on the people you've worked with, and in terms of who I've worked with, I haven't really seen a team that listens quite as well as a digital service team, and they are very, in terms of they are very pragmatic people, especially in the project that we observed, because it required finding a lot of specific details, kind of questions that don't appear to you at first glance at the project. And they were very pragmatic in thinking out, how is the user going to work through this, and identifying all those points and delivering on and answering those questions to the best of their ability. And I think that is kind of more, that kind of practical, pragmatic focus is a little bit rare in terms of what I've seen, but I don't know, I'm an undergrad student, but yeah, they were really a joy to work with.
Thank you. Yeah, that concept of being a great listener and then not being willing to accept the way that things have always been done seems to definitely be a theme that we see across the digital service network. So thanks for servicing that question for us, Ben. Another great question here from Jillian. How do digital teams make sure that the office that they were supporting would be okay once they pulled out or moved on from the engagement or the assignment? Any observations or perspectives to offer on?
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, so this project in particular, very important to mention, is still very much ongoing. And I think as the digital service team really identified that this is a maturing program, and they are very smart in kind of scoping out what is required at each stage on a timeline level, and making it clear that that this program will mature, and in the legislation and the policy was kind of designed to mature and really grow and expand. So I think they're very aware of developing a technology and developing a relationship with those administering the technology that is very responsive and flexible. And in terms of how they would leave the project, I think, again, that's still up in the air, but ultimately, they've built in a lot of institutional knowledge, not only of the structure. They've kind of thought long-term of, hey, what does a 5-year vision of this system look like? What will the tech need to accomplish that? And kind of very good in communicating that to the teams that own this product, or the teams that will own this product. And again, it's very, very much an evolving project, and very interested to see what happens. But I think it's a lot of looking to the future and focusing on the program maturing, which was very important to that project.
A question here from Thomas. How would other public sector entities use your work in a practical way to implement and leverage this amazing effort? And then wondering if we're coming up with a template or structure that came from this research. And I'll just jump in quickly and say that that's exactly why we wanted Ryan and Joyce to kick off the creation of the Digital Service Network, is laying a baseline or an understanding of what we mean when we talk about digital service teams. And then from here, we really hope to surface more stories about successes and experiences of digital service teams across the country. And so I'll just put that out there first as saying, this is the first of many learning and sharing experiences that you can expect if you engage with us. But we'll turn it over to Ryan and Joyce if there are any other templates or plans in the future that you're working on or that folks could expect from you and from the work that you're doing.
Yeah, Kirsten, honestly, my answer was going to be DSN too. Yeah, exactly right. DSN is currently trying to put together resources for people in government that are dealing with these problems currently, maybe in newer digital service teams, or people in government that are just like, hey, I see what Colorado is doing. Like, how can I get that going in my state or my city? And there's a lot that goes into standing up a digital service team, and that would be a really great webinar in and of itself. So yeah, I mean, anybody on this call that really is interested in doing a deeper dive, as this webinar was obviously very high level on what a digital service team is, but anybody interested in doing a deeper dive on what it takes to form one and sustain one, and what makes one successful, I mean, really stay connected with DSN, because that's what we're working on.
Yeah, and we'll have some information here as we close out. Our October event is all about the creation and evolution of a digital services team in the city county of San Francisco. But let's make sure we can get through everyone's questions. Michael has a question about, are you aware of any legal roadblocks on the agile way of working on the digital service teams? For example, requirements on project planning, documentation, milestone setting, etc.
Honestly, I am not. You know, as somebody whose experience with digital service teams has existed, you know, within Georgetown and at the Beeck Center, that's a really great question for somebody in the trenches that has like been dealing with this work and implementing these new ways of working. But Joyce and I didn't really come into contact with that in our work this summer.
All right, Michael, we'll be circling back with you to follow up on this question and find out ways that the Digital Service Network can answer this and support you in getting some great answers. A wonderful question from Katie, one of my favorite questions to ask on a webinar like this. What is something that surprised each of you or changed your perceptions during your experience?
Yeah, I think I can go first on this one. Again, what we really emphasized at the end about the policy happening at the same time as the implementation, or the policy decisions happening at the same time as the implementation, and specifically how that is actually a very, very, very good thing. I remember like midway through the process, we asked our points of contact, what if it seems like policy decisions are happening at the same time as implementation? That might result in some difficulties. What if these just happen at different times? What if policy decision came first? Wouldn't that be so much better? Very naive point of view. And the point of contact very smartly said, I don't think so, because then policy decisions would be made, they would get handed down to the tech team or the implementers, and they would realize these decisions probably aren't the most effective or aren't going to serve users the best. They don't actually work in this context, et cetera, et cetera. And then this whole process would just start over again. So very much that was not just surprising, but very, very eye-opening in that implementation is not, it's not as clear cut as people think it's going to be. That's the difficulty of the job, but also why it's very important to have good teams on this that recognize that and can deliver on that.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, you know, this experience made me realize that, you know, building great technology products is as much, if not more so, about anticipating and preparing for challenges and managing complexity as it is about designing a great looking application at the end of it. You know, that's why a product roadmap isn't, or at least it shouldn't be, a list of features to come. It's a framework for reaching a certain outcome. So taking that approach is critical in the civic tech realm, because, you know, not reaching the right outcome has material effects on people's lives, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. And so let's start to wrap things up by, we'd love to hear what's next for both of you. What are you working on? What are you researching? And then how can attendees stay in touch with you and get connected with you?
Yeah, so at the Beeck Center right now, I'm still on the Digital Service Network. My research here is currently focusing on exploring why digital service teams should exist separate from traditional IT functions in government, and also how a digital service team should approach change management and how successful teams have in the past. How you can stay connected with me. I'm not really active on Twitter. There's not much there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I'm like /RyanPowers1, but yeah, I mean, I do not keep a high profile, online. Joyce.
Yeah, I unfortunately have left Beck after this summer, but I'm a student now, graduating in a year. We'll see what happens after that. But yeah, also not on Twitter, but yes, I do have a LinkedIn as well.
Great. Well, thank you. We have added your LinkedIn to the chat. So please, everyone, get connected with Ryan and Joyce. They're doing great work. They've done great work for all of us, and will continue to be valuable resources in public service. So again, thanks to Ryan and Joyce for sharing with us their research today. If you joined us and you liked what you heard and you're interested in doing similar research in your state or region, please let us know and we'd be happy to connect you with digital service teams. This type of sharing out and reporting on the work that's being done in this somewhat emergent field is really important. It helps us tell a story about the ways that government is providing modernized services. So please get in touch with us. Let us know how we can help you replicate this research in your neck of the woods. Again, a reminder that a recording and a recap will be available for you online, and we'll send that out to you over email as well. We're adding a link in the chat to make sure that you're part of our updated mailing list, so you are in the loop about upcoming events and content and resources that we're developing. And as I mentioned, we have another DSN webinar coming up in October. It's called The Evolution of the City and County of San Francisco's Digital Service Team. The event is on October 12th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. This is a government-only conversation, so please use your .gov email address to register. And it's only for folks who work for government, so they can have an open and authentic conversation about the evolution of one of the first digital service teams at the local level. And we're very excited about the launch of one of the Beeck Center's sister projects, the Digital Benefits Network Hub. And we will launch that on October 20th at 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern to learn more about this first of its kind one-stop shop for practitioners who are working to improve access to public benefits and services. And so that registration link is also in the chat for you. And again, when we follow up, we'll share all of these RSVP links, but most of all, let's give Ryan and Joyce a big round of applause and a huge thanks for sharing out their research with us today. Thanks, everyone. On behalf of the DSN, we're so glad you were here and look forward to seeing you at a future event. Take care and have a great afternoon.